Well, I wanted to talk about how to create a buck bedding area in a bench system. And what's interesting about this is a lot of people have logging trails, ravines like this, a little bit of drop offs. You might only have a change in elevation of 20 feet on your property. Here we're at about 250 to 300 feet, depending on what part of the hollow we're in and where we're at on the property. Bottom line is deer will bed on these flats. Right here, I'm leaning against a tree almost because it's fairly steep. Both my feet are pointing uphill. We don't have any flat ground right here. There's some flat ground right up there on the point, but other than that, pretty much a hillside here, and goes down to a steep ravine. And these bucks will be in locations like this. We have food up that way about 150 yards, food this way 150 yards. What we've done is we have bedding area about 100 yards that way. We pocket cut and then switchgrass edge. We'll cut the edge up there. We're talking about that in another edge feathering video, and edging for deer and habitat, really, because it applies to all habitat. And then you see with a big food plot like that over there through the trees, we're actually edging that out too. And what that means is we're cutting the edge along that entire food plot, cutting those trees back. We're cutting them back so they're perpendicular to the field edge. What that means is the deer can escape, go back and forth. They can run off the food plot, run on. You never want to wall them in. In this case, we just want sunlight into this area. But by creating a bedding area here, we're complementing a bedding area over there that's next to the food. Like I talk about all the time, when those deer are bedding next to that food source and you're creating that bedding edge, we're putting a switchgrass out in the food plot. It creates that opportunity for doe and family group bedding over there. If we don't have the bedding over here or over there, it's really open off that food plot, comes down into here, and all of a sudden a deer that's right here can see right out into the food plot. They don't want to do that. We're 150 yards away. It's a lot of space wasted. So we're creating bedding edge, feathering that edge, switchgrass on the inside of it, hardwood regeneration, so by the time a deer gets 20 yards into the woods, they feel very secure. What does that make this back here then? Makes it buck bedding. Doesn't matter if we have food all the way at the bottom and we're halfway up, or if we have food all the way at the top and we're halfway down. It creates that opportunity for buck bedding. Now there's no certain type of cut that you need. You need to evaluate the timber you have and then cut accordingly. For example, we have a giant red oak straight across from here. It was probably about a 17, 18 inch diameter red oak. Very tall, very straight, and it needed to come down because within this ravine right here, we have southerly exposure. We get a lot of sunlight back in here, but that top was right up here. So that keeps this entire ravine up here from getting good sunlight to it. Anything you cut, you have to get sunlight down to the floor. And that's the key with working on this bench. So we have a combination of some white oak cuttings we've chosen to leave, like every third white oak through here, small or big, the ones that look like they could be a dominant mass producer someday. And then we've cut down a lot of red oak. We've left some red oak that are really pretty, have really nice tops, but then we've cut down some red oak. So just because it's an oak doesn't mean you cut it down. We want sunlight down to the forest floor here. For example, we could come in here, there's a lot of leaf debris, sticks. We could come in here and have prescribed fire. That's not going to do anything because we're not getting sunlight to it. We need hardwood regeneration. If we had a prescribed fire in here, we get sunlight, we could get some green herbaceous growth. But the fire would actually destroy some of the young hardwood regeneration. Those deer have to have that hardwood regeneration around here in the fall and winter to survive. The green herbaceous growth that would be in here, we don't care as much about because at summertime, they have more than enough food around here. They have several times more food than they actually need around here. So it'd be a waste of resource. We want those briars, hardwood regeneration, shrubs coming in to supply the deer what they absolutely need and crave from October, November, all the way to March when things open up. So we focused on the type of timber we have along this bench. And the key is that, especially if we want this to be more buck bedding, we have to have those does up there. We have to have that edge work to where we have the opportunity for does to bed close to the food here or there. And then you step back into here, and the real key after accomplishing those steps, and I hope it makes sense, the food and the bedding up by the food creates the opportunity for bucks back here. That's that layered approach, but then we have to get sunlight into here. So we've gotten sunlight back into this area on this side of the bench and this side of the point that wraps around in this area by knocking down some mature oak, we had some basswood that was cut down, some smaller junk trees, some cherry along this edge, and some aspen. And let's go over on this side and see how much is opened up, because once we get on this other side, this one we have our Camp Kicking Bear charity event in June. We're going to be walking around this edge right here. And yes, you can walk in your buck bedding areas during the summertime, spring, towards the end of the summer, because the bucks that are going to be bedding in here, that we expect to bed in here October, November, December, January, are likely bedding somewhere else in very open timbered woods that this used to be on someone else's land. So that's okay. So let's just move right around the corner here. I'm going to show you how we addressed the popple that was over here and how we cut those down as a part of this movement in this bedding area to get full regeneration and get some sunlight to the ground. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a lot going on with this food plot and many more. I can't wait to plant this. Check out what we're planting on WHS Wildlife Blends. All 12 of our blends are out. You can order bulk seed, buckwheat, and rye. Check it out. We have a new website. Click on seed on the whitetailhabitatsolutions.com. It'll take you right to the new blend site. Appreciate you for checking it out and taking the time to watch this. So this is an extension of that bedding bench that wraps right around this point. And it goes that way. It actually goes that way for about 150 yards. And so between this entire movement right here, we're talking over 200 yards, 225 yards around this point, and it's probably a little bit longer this way too. And we get over this side. Now when we get up to the top of this bench as it wraps around, and we're literally, when we have that habitat event, we'll just take the people right around here because everyone who attends, it's just a nice trail to come right around because it's a deer trail. We're not trying to cut timber and logs on top of the deer trail. We're trying to get sunlight to that area because that's an area where they want to bed anyways, like this point right here. It's full of rubs, full of old rubs. The rub right next to Dylan right now, it's all scarred. You can tell it's been rubbed for many years. This one right behind me, this one's been rubbed for many years. It's been carved out right here on this popple. So if you look downhill here, we're gonna go down there in a second, but in this area, we probably had 50 different popple to cut down, and we wanna cut all those down in a cluster. They don't have as big a canopy, as big as a top as some of these big leaning oaks, scraggly oaks that are out here. So while we cut down that occasional oak, some of those big basswoods, we cut a giant elm over here because it had a huge top. But when he comes to this popple right here, or aspen, you're cutting it down in a complete block. They're all connected so we can get maximum regeneration. We're standing back here because I want to give you the effect of where we're trying to cut and get sunlight into. We're not trying to, again, allow this to fall right on top of this area. I hope it makes sense. You leave this area alone and get sunlight to it. That's what starts to regenerate. But when you come down here, you can see all these cut tops. It just opens up wide to the sky. It's beautiful. You can see right across, and you'll probably notice that we still have snow on the north-facing slopes. So obviously this is a south-facing area. We're not picking on this area because it's south-facing. I don't want you to think that deer will only bed on a south-facing slope, so they'll bed in proximity to food and stress levels. So wouldn't matter if this is north-facing or south-facing. We've cut on some north-facing slopes too. We don't even think about north face or south face because I've hunted around here long enough that it really doesn't matter if a buck wants to relate to an afternoon food source every day and you have does like we're talking about where we can stack those up against the food source, then you're going to have bucks bedding back in a location like this no matter what direction it is. Never think that it has to be a certain direction when it comes to buck bedding. But come on down here. We actually have one younger cedar right here. We have a cedar over here, so a few cedars around here. We're going to bring full sunlight to them so they can grow a little bit more. And then the next step is we want to order some white pines that we can stab back in these tops right here, where these down trees that are not connected, not the non-hinge cut. Because you've hinge cut some trees, depending on the species, if it's more oak or hardwood related, hickory, as opposed to these aspen right here. But we can stab those pines back in those conifers, 5 or 6 here, 5 or 6 there. They'll be protected because of the down trees. They're not connected, they're not hinged, so they're not living, and it acts as a cage for those deer. So we'll do that down here. But check out how open this is. This is pretty cool down here. So you see all these aspen that we had cut down here. Someone I've started to have work on the property a little bit. His name's Joel. He was out here helping cut, so he's been a blessing to have get out here because I can only cut and do so much. First time I've ever had some help out on the land other than Dylan Jen now, Dante, you know, out on the properties where get some help when it comes to chainsawing. It's been me. So this is kind of nice, but just wide open to the sun here. And you see we're going to get a lot of sunlight on this cedar right here. But look, when we get over into here, it just completely opens up for a very, very wide area through here. We're getting full sunlight into this entire area. This giant grove of popple here will explode in growth. And we've even cut almost down to the bottom down there because we wanted to make sure that we cut all of these out of this location. So this is how you can really focus on those interior benches if you're in hill country. And it might even be in, you know, really, if you look at the map, it's probably about 50% of all whitetail properties experience some amount of appreciable elevation change, whether that's 20, 30 feet, or in the case over where I hunt in Wisconsin, it's more like 400 to 450 feet, even on 40 acres, or around here where it's more like 250, 300, 200, 200 to 300, depending on what spot of the property we're on. That creates these opportunities. And what you're looking for is just that spot where we have the ridge up there. We actually have a bench system above us. So you can have a series of benches going on. And we'll talk about how to do that on a logging trail. We'll show that, how we're combining our access, logging trail, planting, timber cutting to let sunlight in another video. But when it comes to creating a buck bedding bench area, whether this is on this bench, we could actually step up to there. We're dropping timber on these steep faces where they didn't like to bed or move anyways. They move up and down. So we have a lot of perpendicular movement. Deer can go up and down right here, up and down over there, everywhere. We're cutting complete blocks of popple, aspen. We're staggering cutting large canopy trees like the big basswoods, some of the oaks. And then we're hinge cutting some of the smaller trees that are in the way or feature a good opportunity to put some browsable food down at waist high. And that's why we try to hinge cut more waist level, belly level, as opposed to head high, because we want that browse starting down here low so deer can actually eat it. So once again, I hope you like this buck bedding bench. We will, because we have a stand on the back side of the food source over there, back side of the food source over there. We have a stand right down here on a connected logging trail that we'll install this year. We'll put a mock scrape there pretty soon. And that's between another bedding area. So it's kind of like picture a bedding area, a movement bench system, and then a bedding area. We don't even really need to cut on that bench system. It's so pronounced, and it's right at the top of the draw, so deer are funneling right around that. That's where we'll have a stand. We can access it really well in between all the food sources. We don't have to spook any deer. So big picture wise, bedding area, stand location, bedding area, stand locations on the outside here, and then up against that bedding area in the distance, about 300 yards away, we have a water hole stand. So we have stands for morning, evening, food source stands for more evening, in the woods stands for more buck cruising, water holes, mock scrapes, and that's how you start putting it together. We'll actually, again, we'll go over this area in our charity event in June on Father's Day. This will be an area that we'll bring people to firsthand, but I hope you like it in the video, because we like it and we can't wait for the explosion of growth to take place in this buck bedding area for this summertime. Now, I don't know if you've checked out our main website lately, whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, but we've really had a lot going on, including hats, books, our web class, and certainly our new seed company, WHS Wildlife Blends. When you click on seed on our site, it'll take you right to our brand new site for the seed company. We have all 12 blends available. So check it all out though. I encourage you, I appreciate you checking it out. Whether you buy anything or not, really appreciate you visiting the site and seeing what's going on, and continue to watch because we have big things coming later this year.